have a quorum present. We have 11 representatives of various agencies and departments. So we have the Brookhaven National Lab Fire Rescue Group, Eastport Fire Department, Flanders Fire, Law Enforcement Council, New York State DEC, the New York State Office of Fire Prevention and Control, New York Wildfire and Incident Management Academy, Protected Lands Council, Ridge Fire Department, Riverhead Fire Department, Suffolk County Water Authority, and Wading Rivers Fire Department. So I think it's 12, right? We have 12.
Started with introductions. I'm Captain Tim Barrens with New York State DEC. I'm one of the co-chairs. Polly?
Polly Wiegand, I'm the Science and Stewardship Program Manager for the Central Pine Barrens Commission.
Representing.
Oh, and I'm representing the Protected Lands Council.
I'm Sean Ziegler, the ecologist at Central Pine Barrens Commission. I'll be representing NIWEMA at this meeting.
Judy Jacobson, Deputy Director, Central Pine Barrens Commission, representing Suffolk County Water Authority.
John Pavasic, Executive Director, Central Pine Barrens Commission, and I'm representing the Law Enforcement Council.
And I'm Bob Panko, I'm the Fire Management Specialist for the Central Pine Barrens Commission, and I'm just presenting.
Okay.
You want to call on that?
Any other folks on the...
All right, folks, starting at the top left. Jason?
I'm David Fox, the Flanders.
Okay. Who else we got up there? Jason Ward?
Jason Ward, New York State Office of Fire Prevention and Control, State Fire.
Okay.
Bill Kelly, Riverhead.
Tim?
Tim Kelly, B&L Fire Rescue.
Ed? You still there, Ed? Ed's on mute.
Ed
Okay.
Schneier?
Ed Schneier, you there? Okay, we'll come back to Ed. Hey, Ted, you there?
Ted Kern, Ridge Fire Department.
Hey, Ted. Kathy?
Kathy Schwager, ecologist, Brookhaven National Lab.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi.
And Kevin McQueenie?
Kevin McQueen, representing Wading River Fire Department.
Okay. And we got Sean up there? Okay. All right, very good. All right, looking at the, going off the agenda here, we've got retirements. What was the last word we heard? We heard from Chris at all?
Chris, yeah, so Chris has, Chris Lindberg, former chair now. He has retired, from both his full-time job at FDNY and then, as a Manorville Fire Department fire chief. And I believe at this point he is now formally relocated to South Carolina. So,
Okay.
so he resigned, I think a couple of months ago, formally submitted a letter to resign as chair of the Wildfire Task Force. And then certainly Ed Schneier recently retired as a co-vice chair of the Wildfire Task Force, and Ed resigned, he retired from his position as Suffolk County Fire Rescue and Emergency Services Coordinator of Emergency Preparedness. And but Ed, we're grateful, is participating tonight in these events. And then we have not done any type of consideration or nomination at this point for replacement. So Captain Barrens, at this point, you're the last person standing in terms of the executive arm of the Wildfire Task Force. And that's something I think that we'll have to look at in 2021 in terms of replacement of both the chair and the other vice chair.
Have we had any interest?
Not at this point. I don't know that folks are aware. We haven't, it's not something that's been broadcast. We haven't sent out a notice to folks widely, I believe. So that may be something that we can do come the new year, is solicit interest in folks in being nominated for those positions. And then both of those would have to be by the commission at one of their regular meetings. And then, so, you know, that's something I think, you know, we'll take up as we get into the new year.
Okay.
And then for myself, I'm listed here. I've previously announced, not everybody may know, but I've announced that I'm retiring from my position here as executive director. My last day on the job, my last day working will be Friday, January 29th, 2021. Originally, I was looking to retire the first week of January, but I've moved that to the end of January. So basically 2 months from today will be my last day.
Wow. Out of all the things all the folks that have retired, we certainly have a huge, it's a huge disappointment, but great for you guys. That's awesome. Looking forward to seeing where our replacements are going to come from. Has any thought been given to who's going to fill your shoes?
We've been my position's has been advertised. We have conducted a first round of interviews, and we have to basically the second round of interviews and further progress on my replacement will be determined by both the DEC Regional Director, who serves as our chair of the commission, Kerry McGallagher, and the Suffolk County Water Authority CEO, Jeff Szabo. So I have not heard from them recently, but that's basically where the next steps are going to come from in that regard. The person who replaces me basically has to be approved by both the Suffolk County Water Authority Board of Directors at one of their meetings, and as well as at a commission meeting. So it's a two-part process. The next meeting of the Suffolk County Water Authority Board, I believe, is December 17th. At this point in time, I don't believe there's going to be a candidate selected in time for that meeting. So I think, you know, the earliest we'd be looking at would be January at this time.
Well, Carrie's accepted an assignment.
That hasn't been
Brought to.
Yeah, you and I can talk
later.
offline later. So.
Ed Schneier's back with us.
Okay. Hey Ed, how you doing?
Okay, how are you guys?
Really good, Ed. We're just we're kind of wiping tears away from our eyes right here. We're going over some administrative business, and we're hearing about all these retirements and everyone moving to greener pastures. And John was just saying how he's submitted his retirement papers and will be departing here for fair winds and following seas on January 29th of 2021. And I'm just trying to say for the record that out of all these folks that have been with us all these years, yourself included, and John has done a fantastic job of keeping us alive here and keeping this wildfire task force burning bright. And I know I'll miss him personally, and looking forward to his same skill set being transferred to this new person coming in. So thanks, John, for all his hard efforts and work throughout the years, and it's much appreciated and hasn't gone unnoticed. And same to you, Ed. We're going to miss you, but keeping in mind what our replacements are going to look like over the next couple of months, hopefully you might have some suggestions and ideas, and we can put that on the table for another time and discuss that. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I plan on being involved, obviously at a much lower level. I'm still a member of the Southampton Town Chiefs Council and the Eastport Fire Department, so in that respect, I'll still be here and try to attend meetings when I can. So, and I certainly help out anywhere I can. You know me.
All right. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Captain. I really appreciate that.
Anytime, John. It's well meant. All right. Just moving on. Is there any other particular commission activities?
Just that, the commission has been conducting its meetings for most of the year now remotely. So the next meeting of the commission is scheduled for November 18th? November 18th. And then one meeting in December, and will be, some of the items on this agenda, including the next topic, will be taken up by the commission at their next several meetings as well. And that's, pretty much it, I think, at this point.
Okay. All right. Comprehensive Prescribed Fire Management Plan. I know Pauline's had a big hand in this. We have a little presentation going on today. You guys wanna take that?
Sure.
All right.
So I'll introduce Bob Panko. He's going to present on the comprehensive prescribed fire management plan that we are in the final stages of developing. It was a recommendation within the Wildfire Task Force Wildland Fire Plan, Chapter 11, and the different components of that were delineated in that plan are in our comprehensive plan. And because of the work that you do and your assistance in fire suppression and response to wildfire, we wanted to make sure that all the fire departments and members of the Wildfire Task Force were aware and could have the opportunity to provide comment to help us strengthen the plan itself. And so Bob's going to introduce what the components of that plan are, and then we'll have a little question and answer period thereafter, and I'll go over the next steps as far as finalizing the plan. So,
Yep, okay.
Presentation.
Okay. All right, folks, good evening here again. My name is Bob Panko. I'm the fire management specialist for the Central Pine Barrens Commission. Been in this job a little over a year now. Got about 2 more years to play out in it. I just want to pass on that this plan has been a combined work of all the Central Pine Barrens Commission people that you see in this room. I kind of had the leadership role on it, and then these guys straightened me out about a lot of stuff, and we've been working on it collectively since. There we go. Some little introduction here as to where we're situated. You know, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation gave a grant in the form of a contract to the Central Pine Barrens Commission. The grant runs for 5 years from 2018 till March 2023. And the task of the commission is to develop, establish, lead, and implement an adaptive and collaborative prescribed fire program in the public lands in the Central Pine Barrens. And I might add to that that's primarily focused on the forested areas, We'll assist in the grasslands, but that's not our primary role in this contract. Grant was designed to build capacity for the Central Pine Barrens Commission, but it was also designed here for us to help build capacity within the Long Island region. So I want to add into that, just pass on to all the structural fire departments here. And as we talk about these prescribed plans that we're doing, as we talk about doing the implementations, I want to make sure that you know that you're always welcome to come out here and participate on the ground when we're doing those, even if it's just an observation role, because that's all you want to have the time and opportunity to do. Some of the reasons that it was good for the Pine Barrens Commission to get this role is that, you know, we don't have any land ownership here in the Central Pine Barrens Commission, but our core mission is planning and coordination, so that's what this plan is all about. It allowed by having individual staff, myself primarily, that have been hired to work on prescribed fire. I don't have any other things that are distracting me. I don't have to, like the Rangers, I don't have to go out and worry about rescuing people and all this and that. I can focus on prescribed fire. I come here with a background and good experience, and Sean and the staff, some other staff members also have some good experience in this. I've been involved in prescribed burning as a burn boss since 1994, all over the country. And a good benefit of the Central Pine Barrens Commission doing this is that we have, through our major role, we have the ability to be working across jurisdictions and land ownership, so we're not constrained about who we can work with within the Central Pine Barrens. Plan is authorized in our Central Pine Barrens plan. As Polly already said too, I want to emphasize that the 1999 Task Force Fire Management Plan in Chapter 11 identified the need for this comprehensive plan, so we're fulfilling that long outstanding desire and need. Our job here is to provide interagency prescribed fire program direction, trying to bring in all the partners and players, as well as a good part of this plan is the fact that the New York State DEC lands within the Pine Barrens have all had the secret compliance, the environmental compliance for prescribed fire on the state forest areas. I know Brookhaven National Lab, Wertheim Refuge have gone through federal compliance, but this plan allows us to go forward and get compliance for the state requirements and environmental quality throughout all the public, county, and town-owned lands, as well as other state lands that were not covered by the state forest. What's in the plan, ecological background of this whole, what goes on here, why, the land use background, how it got created by human occupation, fire weather, fire history. Fire history, we're going to talk about both those components a little bit and more in description. It's really important to understand your fire history and your fire weather if you're going about trying to plan prescribed fire activities, if you're trying to mimic those activities. Plan goes on to describe all the different types of, the major types of fuels that we have and gives them classifications, talks about legal requirements, talks about the mechanics of burn plan preparation, talking about management techniques, including community outreach techniques, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. Fire management unit descriptions here, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but we basically took this 106,000 acres and broke it into 5 fire management units to make it more manageable and to give us a landscape kind of perspective in our management. It also describes research and ongoing monitoring that would be part of prescribed fires pre-burn, immediate during the burn, and post-burning to see if we were achieving the established objectives for the prescribed burns. What are we trying to do? Sustainable, long-term, collaborative, and adaptive program. We got a lot of things here that we're kind of showing out in projects, with some specific projects, but I don't want to lose track of this adaptive word over here, that as things change and we recognize different things, as you guys come up with different ideas or see needs for how it integrates, how prescribed fire integrates with suppression efforts, we want to adapt this program. Overall, safety is always our number one objective. We want to maximize use of prescribed fire and to provide protection to lands adjacent to the public forested lands. We want everybody to understand their roles in organizations, their responsibilities. We want to have a shared prescribed fire processes so people can look at these and understand what's going on and where the components are. We want to restore and maintain fire-dependent species and ecosystem health. A big one here is this eliminating peaks and valleys. You know, as I studied the history of what's gone on here, you see in prescribed fire, you see different efforts that were made over different years and time. Somebody got a little funding here, and they did some stuff for a few years, and then the funding went away, and it went away. And then a couple of years later, some other funding source came in. Somebody did some stuff. It went on for a few years, and then it went away. So we're hoping to flatten out those peaks and valleys and establish an ongoing prescribed fire program. We're emphasizing the prescribed fire on a landscape versus a small parcel by parcel basis, because if you're really going to make some impacts in this ecosystem of 106,000 acres, you need to have some big view planning processes. And we're hoping to be able to reduce through some processes this expensive, time-consuming mechanical reduction stuff prior to burning, whether we can introduce some fire into places that really haven't been pre-treated. When we look at the fire, the current need, we're going to talk about fire weather, fire history, and alternatives to prescribed fire. Just real quick on this, you know, if you look as a prescribed fire burn boss, prescribed fire manager, and prescribed fire author, burn plan author, one of the first things I always look in an area is the windrows. What are the prevailing winds? So I can start picturing which vectors of winds that I might have when I'm writing prescribed burns. You know, this is our kind of summertime vector with primarily a southwesterly breeze. This is from the period of record from 2004 to 2015 at the Eastport Ross Station, which is maintained and established and maintained by the Central Pines Barrens Commission. You see, though, if you change over into more of the October period, the fall period, you see a little bit more of a shift here, that winds are more westerly, a little bit more of that northwest component going on. You still have winds from all directions, though, in both those charts, and that's a pretty good reflection of sea breeze and things like that, too, so those kind of effects. This is kind of neat little thing on fire history, too. If you look at this, there's a lot of stuff here to look at. This green line here going up and down, that's the annual rainfall amount. This is data from Long Island, New York, and it goes back to 1930. It goes over to out here to about 2016, 18. Down here in the bottom is our fire history of 90 years. And all these fires, these columns down here represent fires in thousands of acres or thousands of acres that burned in a given calendar year. And it's intuitive to understand this line right in here is the average rainfall line. So anytime that the green line is above the average line, those are wet years, wet periods. Anytime it's below, those are drought cycles. And the intuitive part of it is, if you look at it, in 90 years of data, the fire history shows that primarily all our big major fire events, big major fire years, all occur during particularly drought cycles and usually several years into the drought cycle. I mean, look at 1995 right here. You know, it started here about 1991, and it was just drought, 95, boom. You know, you wind up with the Rocky Point fire and the Sunrise fire. So intuitive, makes sense. There's a couple of exceptions, but I'm saying this because large fires, which are 100 acres or more, those are the fires that really impact the environment. Those are the ones that really change the ecotone, the ecosystem, and reset the clock and disturbance. So those are important things if you're trying to plan to do prescribed burning. You can look and say, okay, I need to be working on towards some of these kind of goals. Another interesting thing, if you look here, so TNC, guy named Andrew Windich, did a study published in 1994. He reviewed all the fires he could find. He looked at the aerial photos from each year and took the fire scars and measured them out, mapped them all out. Unfortunately, we didn't have dates of origin, even though Windich, when he did his work, referenced fire reports, things like that, newspaper articles, and tried to tie in dates of origin of some of these older fires. But so we limited it to 30 fires that were primarily all 100 acres or larger. Only 4 of them were less than 100 acres, and they were at least like the minimum 66 acres. And you see in 30 fires in 90 years, 18,000 acres from these 30 fires. These statistics, I think, so it's only a small subset of all the fires, but I think they kind of generally show some trends. You know, if you look at fires in April and May, they account for 80% of the large fires that we had in 90 years. And they account for about 50% of the total acreage. The other thing that's really interesting, though, to me, is July-August fires. And this just it includes the Rocky Point and the Sunrise fires, but you can see it also includes several other fires as well. You know, normally in the eastern United States, we don't look at a summertime fire season, but we certainly have that in Long Island, and it's episodic and periodic. And it depends upon these big cycles, these cycles of drought. And look, these are 17% of the fires in 90 years, but they collectively account for 47% of the acreage. So you can see the fire history is telling us when we are in certain conditions and certain drought cycles, things get up and romp, and those are when big fires occur. Only one fire, you know, we typically think of a fall fire season, including October in most of the eastern United States. Only one large fire in 90 years. It did burn 600 acres. Yeah, so, but at any rate, just some stuff that's interesting. We talk about alternatives.
Was that the 1985 fire?
It was
October 85?
The reason I ask is there was a very unusual fire, burned a lot of land in the state park near Route 25 and William Floyd Parkway in October of '85. And that was a month following Hurricane Gloria. So there was significant tree damage from the salt water, a lot of suspended dead leaves in the trees at that time. And that was a nighttime fire, in fact. That was a pretty aggressive, fast-moving fire. Ran between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. Very unusual.
Again, and you get those good alignments there, and that's what goes on. Yep. Thank you, Ted. I wish I could answer you that question right now. I just don't remember off the top of my head.
I suspect it was, though, yeah.
Yeah. Alternatives, prescribed burning. What we're talking about there is, and this is directly out of the fire management plan that you guys put together. This is to say, we're not going to do any prescribed burning, but can we achieve what we're trying to achieve using no management action, just letting Mother Nature and human actions making wildfires take its course? Can we substitute for fire in this fire ecosystem with mechanical or chemical means on their own? And would wildfire serve the purpose of substituting fire disturbance on this ecosystem? And just say, by and large, looking at this, no management action is not a very good alternative. Chemical and mechanical treatments are a component of doing prescribed burning, and they go hand in hand. Independently, they would not be as effective as prescribed fire in this ecosystem for its natural results. And wildfire, when you look at all this acres that we have and look at how much prescribed burning we can maybe do, well, you just got to say that wildfire is a component of returning natural fire disturbance in this landscape, and I'll talk about a little bit more on that in the fire return interval coming up. The next thing, that's what we're going to jump right into, is FRI is a fire return interval. What we're talking about is based on scientific study, based upon study of fire records, based upon large fuel types, not little point sources of information on the face of the earth. We can say things like, how long should it be between fires in this particular habitat? So if you look here, Sarnoff Pine Barren State Forest, this is west of County Road 104, this picture right here. The fire return interval in the pitch pine oak forest is established at 40 to 60 years. I'll give you an example of pitch pine, of fire return interval. Lodgepole pine out in Wyoming, etc., Yellowstone National Park, it's like 200 to 400 years fire return interval. So when those big fires were in Yellowstone, they were due. It was 300, 400 years since they had fires. Here we say 40 to 60 years fire return interval for these pitch pines that you guys drive by every day. I drive by every day. The thing is, in that big block of over 1,500 acres that make up the west side of County Road 104 in the Sarnoff Pine Barren State Forest, there's been no significant fire there in the last 90 years. So that's saying this fire return interval departure is 30 to 50 years overdue. What that amounts to is, you look in this understory, there's no disturbance in here, so these fuels have built up to 13 foot, 15 feet tall underneath these pines. The pines have had no natural pruning by fire, knocking back the amount of pines, so there's too many stems, they're too crowded per acre. This is a habitat with this fire return interval departure that is primed and ready for a huge conflagration when it goes. Now, in that zone, New York State DEC in the last 2 years has done about 75 acres there of reduction here, where they've thinned out the trees, they've removed that overgrown understory that has had no disturbance, they put a mechanical disturbance on the ground, and now this stuff is ready for prescribed fire treatment. And that's what we talk about. Fire return interval is excessive, leads to high fuel loading, and that huge arrangement. Look at the horizontal and vertical arrangement of fuels in here. If you had this going on a real dry cycle, don't you think that's going to get up and walk and crown out and be quite the fire? this is gonna be more manageable, something that we can do with prescribed fire to help treat. The other thing that we have in current conditions is wildland urban interface. We're looking, New York State DEC, another 60-acre area that they did, pine reduction and reduction of those understory fuels was out here in these units south of Kearns Field. These fuel areas are right in the backyards of all these homes. These homes right in here, these homes were built on the fire scars of fires that occurred in 1980s and 1990s. You know, they just rebuilt on those. Some of those were, I looked in aerial photos, and you can see they rebuilt like a year after the fires burned through there years and years ago. These areas are definitely at risk, so that's a high level that we're trying to do. What we want to do is tune up with prescribed fire, use prescribed fire to augment these mechanically treated areas so that we create a real good buffer so that suppression resources don't have to worry so hard, so terribly about fires that are coming through here. When they hit these prescribed fire areas, it'll drop their continuity of fire. I won't spend too much time right on here, but you know, the other indicator that you see in here is high number of dependent of teeny species, threatened and endangered species that we have. An overall ecosystem decline, invasive species, and the southern pine beetle is a great example of what's been going on in there in this ecozone. Our program components here, you know, interagency collaboration at every step of the way. That's why we're talking to you all tonight. Having this comprehensive plan that's followed up with prescribed burn plans, individual areas. We're going to have pre-fire treatment areas that we need to take care of. We're talking about then implementing prescribed burning. We're going to have cooperative agreements where they don't exist. And right now we're working on agreements with both Division of Forest, DEC, and with Suffolk County. We're also looking, because we're trying to augment the whole area, about us purchasing equipment and having a cache here, maintaining that cache so that volunteers and other firefighters can come here and we can equip them and take care of our business. Monitoring, and then I'll just say here, we're looking at trying to have one-stop shopping as a repository of where we can have a lot of centralized information. So every burn plan, if you come here and visit the Pine Barrens Commission, we can show you everybody's burn plans from Brookhaven National Lab to DEC to Wertheim. Everybody's burn plans are here. Everybody can look at them. Everybody can work with them. Program component is a general public education and outreach. We look at that overall. We look at doing that in cooperation with the counties and the county, the state, and the towns and to continue our work that the Pine Barrens Commission has been doing with community wildfire protection plan and implementing those actions that are in there. We also talk about, because we're going to be burning in people's backyards, pre-day and day of burn, communities and subdivision educational outreach, and potential actions that we may engage upon on a given project or given prescribed burn. We may have public events like public meetings or just a public gathering or a place in the public where people can stop by and get information way before we burn. We're talking about fire protection and awareness and protection, the old Firewise kind of stuff that Judy has worked on very diligently for years here, continuing on that. Distributing burn schedules to adjacent neighborhoods, public burn day notifications, and on-site information on the day of the burn. So we're not just putting up a bunch of roadside signs. We got people out there that are explaining to the public what's going on and why. A focus of what we're doing, we're not looking totally at broadcast burning. We're looking at trying to burn some patches and create a mosaic of burn and unburned fuels to break up the continuity of fuels. If you've got those patches where the continuity is broken, if you have a big wildfire marching along through it and it hits a patch like this, which is the old Crescent Bow fire scar a couple of years after it burned, it can't carry through it. And by protecting those communities and subdivisions with mechanical treatments and prescribed fires in advance of wildfires, it gives ICs, you guys, may be able to utilize a wider range of suppression tactics, right? Rather than just going directly right against the fire, maybe taking advantage of some natural breaks or fire line breaks that are out there. The plan also, I said, breaks down this 106,000 acres into 5 fire management units. The fire management units kind of fall along the line of the ecosystem and ecotones that are out there and been identified by I always forget that, Polly, it's the Public Lands.
Protected Lands Council.
Yeah, Public Lands Council. And it fell along their stewardship lines. And when I say that, I talk about like Dwarf Pines Fire Management Unit. It's almost entirely the Dwarf Pines ecosystem. Right? Southampton Fire Management Unit has got state lands, big wildernessy kind of Sarnoff stuff out here, and then all kinds of county parks and some other state park ownership down in here. That's kind of what we broke up these fire management units along that way. It just gives you an idea so you can start working on things at a landscape scale. When you look at some of the landscape scale that it comes in here, it's just, I want to stress this. All right, so Rocky Point Fire Management Unit, about 16,000 acres. It only makes up 15% of the Central Pine Barrens. But look at here, about 2/3 of it is publicly owned lands. I point out Southampton Fire Management Unit. It's a little bit smaller than Rocky Point Fire Management Unit, but it has greater than 2/3 of public land ownership. Even Brookhaven Fire Management Unit, which has some of the least large fire history and is one of the larger fire management units. It's also home, though, to both the federal partners, Brookhaven National Lab and Wertheim Refuge. It makes up 28% of the fire management units, but even that, 50% of it is still publicly owned lands, even though it's less scattered. It's more scattered around than it is in, say, Southampton Fire Management Unit or Rocky Point, where it's very concentrated. Manorville-Calverton Fire Management Unit, that to me is like, that's the most insane and activity and diversity of habitat fire management unit we have. It's the largest fire management unit, and it also has the most robust fire history. And it has a very robust prescribed fire history as well. What we're doing when we're writing plans, we talk about landscape plans. What we're trying to do is get away from this mentality of writing burn plans for 5-acre blocks, 10-acre blocks. So writing landscape burn plans, they've written for up to like 2,000 acres. The key of that is they have similar habitats. So over here on the right-hand side of the screen, this is that sawn-off area west. And you can see it's mostly the same continuous kind of habitat. So if we're writing a plan for this block and this block, the fuels are very much the same, so there's a great efficiency. It allows us to modify plans on large areas, and it creates what I'm calling prescribed fire enhancement zones. This green area here is at 75 acres that were mechanically treated over the last 2 years. We're going to burn that first. Once we have that burned, you know what? Then we can burn this unit that has not been mechanically treated, and we can start using some methodology of burning that unit and letting it run into this, this treated area and now burned area. That's the whole idea of a prescribed fire enhancement zone. And the goal is to reduce the overall amount of need that we have for mechanical reduction stuff in there. We still will have to write some target plans, burn plans that are for smaller areas. It's inefficient. You do a lot of work and a lot of review and a lot of writing for small acreage results, but you can wind up with something that's a good result. We saw an opportunity here in what's called Fresh Pond Wildfire Drill Zone. This burn plan just got approved by Albany. What it is there's 9 acres here. If you can see where my cursor's showing, there's 9 acres of forest that are surrounded by what has been, there we go. Not used to doing this with a cursor. Surrounded by grasslands that we burned. Once these grasslands are burned, we got a bomb-proof area here where we can make wildfires for training purposes and get our people to accomplish some performance task book items that are out there right there. So it's a drill zone area that will be useful for many years to come. We're only going to burn little pieces of it at a time. Overall desired outcomes, improve the forest health. That will also provide resiliency to pest and disease, give us more diversity, maintain suitable habitats for rare and endangered flora and fauna, and retain this fire adaptations that in this fire-created ecosystem. Our prescribed burn strategies, what we're focusing on, we already have places that have approved burn plans. They're high priority to do. The burn plans are there. We just got to go implement them. Prescribed fire enhancement zones, just like that South of Currents project or the Sarnoff West project. Areas that have a lot of these overlap. Areas mechanically treated for southern pine beetle. Areas that provide WUI protection, wildlife urban interface protection. Places that'll benefit forest health. All right, so kind of overall view in there, and we're just trying to move around here, so losing out on time. Comprehensive summary, I just want to say this. Two things I want to say. Number one is, so we laid out 18 projects. And if you look at these 18 projects, they total about 8,000 acres, and that's 7.5% of this whole 106,000 acres. We expect, with given resources that we have and a cooperative help, that we can maybe burn about 300 acres a year. We're not looking at starting off big. We're starting off at little patches. If we, treat per acres of year, if we burn 300 acres a year, we're 0.25% of the central pine barrens. But the idea is that we're starting off a program, working on small areas that's going to reduce our smoke problems, that's going to reduce our fatigue problems about overworked firefighters and lack of total number of firefighters. We introduced Keach-Byram Drought Index into our prescriptions, and that's going to help us. If it's too dry, we're going to reduce our acreage on a given day, and the proper management of KBDI really helps us with smoke management. And again, that patch burning versus broadcast burning, and the caveat that when we're doing our prescribed burn planning, there's no surprises. We're working with all the experts in all the interdisciplinary areas and all the commercial and private concerns so that we're coming up with something good, so when the people are reviewing these burn plans, it should be all good to go. And that's all I got. So with that, I'll say, you got any questions, or maybe Polly, this is what we did before here. I'll back this up to the start. Actually, that's a nice picture to me. And you could throw it out to the audience here.
So, as I mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, is that we wanted to provide this opportunity to share the components of the prescribed fire management plan and get feedback from you and the members of the Wildfire Task Force regarding that plan and presentation. And so we would entertain any questions that you have in regard to the presentation or the content of the plan or the fire program that we would be conducting.
You want to pull up the gallery view there? Yeah.
Well, they can hear us.
Okay.
Yeah, any questions that anybody's got? One of the things that I failed to mention on one of those slides was, it was the one where I was talking about adding that tool to the IC's toolbox there, with a picture that had the crescent bow fire scar on it, is that, we've identified some of these areas where prescribed fire can be good to help protect communities and infrastructure. We'd also be throwing it out to you guys that as we move forward on this, if you have areas where you have improved, say, fire lanes and things like that, fire breaks that you've got, fire things that you've got around some of your structures and municipal infrastructure or subdivisions, let's get together and we can maybe do some patch burning out there to help improve the protectability of those.
Good question.
Bob, would any of these treatments before you put fire down, specifically mechanical treatments, be, a required component before you actually put fire in these areas?
Yeah, there's, I would say this. Right now, we certainly want to thin and treat these areas before we go in and burn them. However, I've been working in collaboration with Dave Crary from, he's the fire management officer at Cape Cod National Seashore, and Dave has been burning in these pitch pine habitats. The only three places that have these habitats pretty much are us and New Jersey and Cape Cod. Dave pointed out, he said he looked at some of the pictures of even like the dwarf pines. And he said, you know, Bob, you can burn that. You just have to do it in the right conditions, the right time of the year, have, you know, sprinkler lines and things like that in there, do it with backing fires. But you can do that. You don't have to treat everything. You can go in and work on some of that. So we're also looking for a gamut of fire. You know, that's these big wildfires, they crown out and they do things, but you know what? In doing so, they make a habitat. So, you know, it is potential. We've left the prescription wide, you know, it's got a far open end, 500 kbdi at an open end. If we had the right spot, like one unit of those burn blocks south of Curran's Field, we could do a little bit of intentional crown fire there very safely under controlled circumstances if that was desirable for habitat.
For the most part, the mechanical treatment is necessary because none of these forest understories have ever been treated or managed. And so in order to do the first entry burns in a safe and controlled manner, that's where the mechanical treatments are necessary. So the investment in implementing a prescribed fire program is high because of the cost of doing those first entry mechanical treatments.
If you've got a haystack of fuel piled up underneath these pines that are only 40 feet tall, you probably want to do some mechanical fit in there to reduce that haystack of fuel underneath them.
Did somebody have a question out there?
I did, actually. I was just curious, Bob, you were talking about this landscape scale, like, plan. I'm just wondering, have you like tailored the prescriptions for each individual, like, community type, or is it just really broad and you're looking to burn?
You hit the nail on the head there, Kathy. Is that, for instance, the first landscape kind of burn plan we've been working on specifically is at south of Curran's, 123 acres.
Right.
60 of those acres have been treated, 63 have not been treated. We basically wrote two prescriptions. It's mostly oak pine forest or pitch pine forest or pine oak forest that's been treated. So we have one prescription for those areas, and then we have a second prescription for the untreated shrubby areas, those that have like the SH8 fuels, you know.
Right.
Yeah, right. So the heavier fuels. So there's two separate prescriptions, and that's it. You can't do it everywhere. But like when I pointed out there in Sarnoff there, you got 1,200 acres within that burn unit perimeter.
Right.
It's either all, you know, pine oak forest or oak pine forest, or a little bit of coastal oak forest and things like that. So there's going to be, for all those adjacent burn blocks that are all touching each other, they pretty much got the same fuel models, the same, same continuity. So
I wasn't sure if you were sort of tailoring each individual one to the site, or if you were working off of, you know, veg maps, or I don't know. I guess I was just trying to get a feel for where you were getting your information as far as determining your prescription and how you're going to move forward. But no, that makes sense.
Yeah. In the case of south of Curran's, there's a combination there of close examination and comparison for some good aerial photo stuff. I found that the 2013 series is very useful in that, for really standing out. But I've also been able to use the TNC data that they put together that is extremely accurate.
Fire Atlas?
Well, in the Fire Atlas stuff there, but all their fire fuels map. That's incredibly accurate. And then some of it has just been ground truth. And I actually did some of the work remotely and had people from DEC that were out there walking lines for me and taking pictures and sending them back. So, and we did create a custom mosaic of all the fuels in that whole area.
Did you? Oh, that's really interesting. I would like to see that at some point if you would share.
Oh yeah. Well, hopefully shortly it's going to be out in the public all over the place. It's up at Dave Crowry's now for technical review.
Cool. Awesome, thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Bob, it's Kevin McQueenie from Wayne River. I just got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
In our district, I didn't see it, but we have Wildwood State Park, that's 767 acres, along with Camp Wallapex, that's 550 acres. Is that going to be included on any of this? I mean, I know you guys do the Otis Pike Preserve every year, and you guys do a good job burning that. But is there something that's going to investigate the fire load in these two areas?
I believe it's outside the perimeter of the Central Pine Barrens, and really our contract with the state is for us to do this work on the Central Pine Barrens. It's not to say that the things that we learn from that could not be shared and that will overlap, right?
Okay.
And Kevin, I'll just point out, so as Bob indicated, Wildwood is outside the Central Pine Barrens. Camp Wallapex is within, but that's privately owned by the Boy Scouts. So our program is only for publicly owned land, so that's land that's owned by, say, the federal government, state government, county, and towns. So we can't expend any public dollars on privately owned lands.
Okay, no problem. And my last question was the Shoreham Power Plant area. There's 800 acres up in there. Have you guys looked at that at all, or is that privately owned, the different areas?
So right now, again, that is still privately owned. The long-term plan for that is for the state, I believe, DEC, to ultimately acquire it, but that's going to be a long process. So right now, again, that's still owned by National Grid, the majority of that 800 acres. So we really can't expend any kind of time, labor on that, or resources on that.
I would say, though, in anticipation, because it is within the expansion of the Pine Barrens, and recognizing that it is to be sold, it is identified in the plan. So if and when it does become a public land, then it can be considered for public land management. This plan doesn't have a expiration date, so we wanted to make it as broad as possible, with review and update as needed. And so, that land area, as being recently appended into the Pine Barrens boundary, is included in reference, but no management is specifically identified for it.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions. Thank you.
All good questions.
Well, thanks, Bob.
All right. Well,
thanks, Polly.
Thank you all.
Great.
One other couple things, just in a wrap-up, if I may. So a copy of Bob's presentation is available on the Commission website on our main page. If you scroll to the events calendar, to the Wildfire Task Force meeting, there's an attached document there of this presentation. And then tomorrow or later in the week, we will also be posting a copy of this presentation that can be viewed. So if you know of anyone that was unable to attend this meeting and would like to review the topic, that they can review the meeting remotely, and that will be posted to our YouTube channel as well, that can be accessed through our website. So our next steps for finalizing the burn plan is to initiate the SECRA process, the State Environmental Quality Review, at the December 16th Commission meeting, and determine lead agency at the January 21st meeting. And through that process, we hope to identify a negative declaration, which is a common and similar declaration for other similar fire management plans that have been conducted. So if you are interested in providing any comment or feedback further than in this presentation meeting, we'd be happy to receive those comments. And who should I send to? Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put my email address in the chat window, but my email address is Polly, P-O-L-L-Y, .Wiegand, W-E-I-G-A-N-D, @scwa.com. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Polly. Again, thanks, Bob. That was really a good presentation. All right, moving along to, the Central Pine Barrens Fire Management Plan Update Subcommittee. Completion of the summary of work.
That's me.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks very much, Captain Brown. Oh, yeah, sure, thanks. Good point. So thank you. So, a couple hours ago, folks, hopefully most of you received an email from me that contained 2 documents in PDF format. The smaller of the 2 is a 5-page summary entitled Fire Management Plan, Wildfire Task Force Fire Management Plan Subcommittee Recommendations for Updates and Revisions. Summary dated today, November 30th. And the other is a much more lengthier document that's a little over 70 pages. That is basically a compendium of the 4 meetings of the subcommittee that going back to the middle of 2018. Basically, so you can distinguish when what the recommendations for, they were color-coded by the date of the meeting, those comments, and basically these were embedded within the various pages of the fire management plan itself. In some cases, the subcommittee decided to go back and revisit some areas that it had already discussed based on new information and input. So those go from, so as I said, the first meeting on August 9th, 2018, to the last meeting, which was December 10th, 2019. And then if we could just jump to the 5-page summary that's dated today, that's the November 30th, 2020 document, PDF. And so this plan is just a little over 20 years old. So it was in significant need of updating. You just think about how technology has progressed since then. One of the things that was pointed out was how cell phones were not widely available 21 years ago, and now people have multiple. Some folks have multiple cell phones, and that has really played a big role in contributing to reporting of fires and also helping to locate fires as well because of the technology we have available on smartphones. So part of the recommendations entail just doing updates and eliminating sections that are now obsolete, or areas where there were recommendations made 20 some odd years ago that have now been fulfilled. And that includes such things as the creation of the New York Wildfire and Incident Management Academy, which was created right around the time that this plan came out and has been in existence all that time since. Also establishing a Central Pine Barrens Fire Weather Station and reporting, providing a daily fire weather danger forecast that has now been widely distributed on a regular basis during the fire season. In addition, doing some more intensive fire prevention outreach and fire prevention mitigation, which includes the fairly recent Ridge, Mandeville, Calverton Community Wildfire Protection Plan that many of the folks that are participating in tonight's meeting were intimately involved with. And so those, some of those things will then be either added onto the plan if they were not acknowledged back in 1999 when the plan came out, and other things that have been accomplished would be either eliminated or updated. So other changes include the recognition of the impacts of climate change, some of the other updating with fires, such as the 2012 fire that occurred since then, some of the climate change related impacts that we've seen, such as southern pine beetle and its impacts on fuel, and continuing to, as I said, to update the recommendations, and also to eliminate ones that time has shown just really were not recommendations that were feasible, and really would not be able to be implemented at the present time. Finally, there's a last section I'll talk about is Chapter 11, which is the prescribed fire program. And now with the presentation of that plan tonight by the folks here, that section really needs to either be updated or eliminated. There's one other section also, the one regarding communications, Chapter 7. It goes into some intimate detail regarding frequencies and who should be providing radios and so forth. And it's really something goes beyond the purview, it was felt, of the Wildfire Task Force. That it's really communications, radio communications are really the purview of the individual fire departments and the county. And so it was felt that really there was not much that really should be put there, if anything. And so it was felt that most of the material from that chapter should probably be eliminated and not add to the background noise and confusion regarding radio communications in particular. So those are the recommendations. And if folks have not received that document, please just feel free to email me if I somehow missed you. My email address is jpavicic, that's J, P as in Peter, A, V as in Victor, A, CIC, at scwa.com or at pb.state.ny.us. And so we'll be working on actually providing a draft, fully updated plan that will have track changes in it that will be presented to the Wildfire Task Force at a subsequent meeting. But I just wanted to capture for the folks here tonight, in general, an overview of the recommendations that have been made, and then we'll be providing that proposed modified track changes plan in the near future. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have, and that completes my presentation. Thank you.
Captain, I just did want to pass on, there was Ted Kern that had the question about that.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, Ted, that was the 10/28, 1985, 599 acres burned up through Brookhaven State Park.
There are no questions about the fire management plan, then we'll move on. I just want to say that these kind of plans, that a lot of work goes into these, and sometimes they go unread or unrecognized. So just keep in mind that the folks here have put a lot of time and effort into this plan. So if you got it, please take a read on it and just make comments as necessary. All right, Fire Weather Subcommittee. Judy,
Hello.
thank you. Hello, there you are. You're already ready to go, so you don't need me.
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Okay. So as expected this year, typical in spring, April, May, we had just a couple of moderate fire danger days. But what was particularly significant was what happened in late July, August, where we entered a very dry period, very droughty conditions, and the KBDI was actually the mid-500s, which is an indicator of drought, where 200 is saturated, 800 is extremely dry, and being over 500 was similar to situations where we've had very significant, difficult wildfires. But because we had the accompanied high humidity and lower wind speeds, not getting the gusting winds, it really kind of helped keep the situation down in terms of potential significant wildfire occurrence. If you got an ignition where it would be a real problem. We've stopped our notifications for the fall in terms of fire danger rating. We'll restart again in the spring. Sean Ziegler and Jerry Taverdi are currently managing the fire danger rating program, and Jerry is still preparing the daily fire danger reports and performing the annual calibration of the fire weather station located in Eastport. Let's see. So also, I generally like to mention that on our website, we also post a table. Each day we have the color-coded fire danger rating. First on the main website page, there's up on the upper top is the fire danger rating in the color code. Low is green, moderate, high, very high, extreme. And then under our work, under wildfire management, there is a link to a table where you can see for the season the different colored fire danger ratings, and you can see kind of how the year is progressing. In terms of fire, I have to wait for the next one, fire-wise. I'm skipping ahead there. But and of course, as usual, if anybody wants to be added to receive the daily fire danger rating, let me know and we'll add you. We are trying to transition away from faxing the daily fire danger rating. We seem to have problems with our phone service and problems, therefore, with our faxing capabilities at times. So we would prefer that if we transitioned over to completely just emailing out to folks. We also need backup phone numbers, which we have for most individuals in case we do run into a situation where we have to reach out and notify people. And that's all I have for that.
Thank you, Judy. Anybody have any questions?
This is Ted. I had to step away to take another call, but when I came back to the computer, I saw that there was a request to unmute. Was somebody looking to ask me a question?
Bob, you want to fill it in?
Ted, yeah. Hey, this is Bob Panko. I just passing on that fire that we talked about was 10/28/1985, 599 acres in right there in Brookhaven State Park.
Right, that's the one I was talking about. It started probably around 3:00 a.m. It ran in the southeast direction, and it was a result of all of the down timber and the burned leaves from the hurricane.
You guys ever determine what was the point of origin on that? Did you?
Yes, it was somewhere close to the Shoreham Wading River High School, south of that area, and it burned kind of southeasterly, came out to Route 25 between East Margin and Panamoka Trail.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, Sean, you're up.
I'm up.
All right, you're up.
Actually, I'll cover.
Okay, sure. All right.
Cover for Kathy.
I don't have an agenda.
So, New York Wildfire Incident Management Academy. So because of COVID, unfortunately, we had to cancel the spring training session. We held out to the last moment possible. And then with October was the same situation. Unfortunately, our longtime host, Brookhaven National Lab, essentially had to shut down because of COVID to outside activities. So we had to look at other venues other than B&L, and we went to a hotel on the expressway where we had our normal suite of classes, reduced from previously, but unfortunately, again, due to COVID, significantly just the travel restrictions that it would have imposed, that it was imposing on both instructors and students from out of state, and particularly out of the Northeast. We ended up having to cancel virtually all of our classes. We were able, though, to conduct the two-day S-130-190, the introductory training class, the field component for folks who take S-130-190 online. and that went off successfully. And thanks in good measure to both Bob Panko and Sean Ziegler, who really helped support that class and teach that class, along with Forest Ranger Brian Gallagher, who was the lead instructor. So we were able to pull that off, thankfully, and maintain appropriate social distancing as a result. However, all the other classes have been postponed, and we're hoping to see where we are in the spring, in the March-April timeframe, as to whether or not we can hold such classes as the 5-day 130, 190, S212 chainsaw class, and so forth. So stay tuned on that, and that also includes our brush truck training. Again, unfortunately, we had to cancel that because of COVID. So we are hoping that we'll be able to, in 2021, reopen the course there adjacent to Suffolk County Fres and the Suffolk County Fire Academy, and run some brush truck training. And then finally, besides brush truck training, helicopter training, I think, Captain Barrens, there was maybe you could just expound on that a little bit, what happened.
Right, we did a very small, this was due to COVID. We did a small helicopter bucket training out in Sarnoff in early June, and it was really to get those guys mission ready. They had a bunch of new pilots. They needed to get trained up on the water bucket, so they did a couple iterations between Wildwood Lake and dropping that water over at Sarnoff. So it was great training. They appreciated it, and we hope to. And they're very heartened that they have a bit easier time getting out in the future as far as training goes. So they're looking forward to doing more of that kind of training on a short window of notice. So look forward to that, and hopefully in 2021. So that's it.
All right, good.
All right.
All I have on.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions about the Fire Academy, upcoming trainings, things of that sort? If not, okay, we'll move on. Firewise Subcommittee. Judy, please. Thank you.
Okay. So for 2020 projects and wildfire prevention home assessments, as you can imagine, COVID put a bit of a damper on folks wanting me to show up on their doorstep to perform wildfire prevention home assessments, even though I don't go inside the house. I did have 2 people that were interested, and I did perform wildfire prevention assessments for them. We also had a homeowner that actually signed up to perform some mitigation work on their property involving the removal of these large dead trees. Some of them had some insect infestation indication. Some of them were definitely in proximity, within 30 feet of the house and closer, so they warranted being removed. And with the grant funding that I received, they were able to apply for reimbursement for the cost of the removal of these trees. And we're continuing to offer that opportunity to homeowners. We still have some grant funding available to help reimburse homeowners for mitigation-related work, which is not just vegetation management, but it can also relate to some structural considerations on the home that will help make it more secure against wildfire.
Judy, is that only permitted within a certain CWPP area, or is that Corps-wide, or?
Right now, that's limited to specifically the Community Wildfire Protection Area, which is largely mainly the Ridge Hamlet area. There is a small portion of Manorville and Calverton, because it extends up to that, I think it's Wading River Manor Road, is the eastern edge of the CWPP area. But right now, that grant funding was specific to that area. And also with another project under the grant funding that I received was to offer a Firewise type of workshop, which, again, due to COVID, which has its pluses and minuses, but it actually, with having to be virtual, is nice because it provides more opportunity for folks. We hope. So we offered a virtual workshop in October. We had about 20 participants. The topic was wildfire ignition resistance, stopping the disaster, and it was led by Tom Well, who's a former NFPA Firewise program manager in the Colorado area. And the workshop focused on what homeowners can do to make their home survive a wildfire, how to actually go look at their home and assess it from the roof to the foundation, and then start looking at the vegetation around their home. And it also included measures that they could take to help improve the safety of their home. And another project I'm working on under the grant funding is preparing a homeowner's guide that will be distributed to residents in the CWPP area, and we'll also be putting an electronic version on our website when it's completed, and that will cover how wildfires ignite a structure, again, how it'll go through for the homeowner, how they can assess their home. It'll help ID areas where your home might be vulnerable to wildfire. And it'll also talk about vegetation reduction measures depending on the distance from your home. The most critical is at 0 to 5 feet within the foundation of the home, and then going out to 30 feet and beyond, depending on the vegetation present. So we're in the process of working on that homeowner's guide, and I hope we have it completed in the spring. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Anybody have any questions about the Firewise program? When I ask this question, can they hear me speak?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, just wanted to be sure.
You have a mic in front of you too, yellow around our.
Oh, yellow
That means
means,
that
oh, we're here,
whoever's
we're able.
picking up the mic and speaking.
Okay, good, all right. All right, wrapping things up, new business. Anybody have any new business they'd like to discuss?
I just I failed to mention that, I just wanted to point out that Carol Scholl, Ostrowski, our longtime administrative assistant, retired at the end of October. Oh, wow. So we just have a new administrative assistant who just started the day before Thanksgiving, and her name is Angela Brown Walton. So we welcome her to our office, and she's starting to fit right in and roll up her sleeves and has gotten to work.
All right, fantastic. All right, any other new business items?
No.
Team, nothing? All right, if that's it, then motion to adjourn the meeting?
And talk about next week.
Oh.
I think at this point we should probably just see how things unfold over the next couple of months, and we can talk about how to plan out
succession planning
and so forth. And I would say maybe let's wait until we get into the new year. That would be my suggestion, and see how things unfold, and we can talk about.
Serious, you can't be deployed anywhere.
Well, that's another story after the show, Robbie. We're talking about that too, so, yeah.
But, so I think, let's hold off at least until we get into January, about, what's gonna happen. We're gonna be in the middle of winter, and, post holidays, so, have a better sense of where we are.
Okay. All right, good. Anything else?
No.
All right. Let's get motion to dismiss. Adjourn?
Vote.
All right, John. Seconded by who? Ed Schneier?
Yeah, it's Schneier.
All right.